I'm Roger Haight, and I'm a scholar in residence at Union Theological Seminary, and I'm a longtime student of Edward Schillebeeckx. Edward Schillebeeckx died just before Christmas at the age of 95. He was one of the great theologians of the 20th century. He was a Belgian Dominican who taught long enough at Nijmegen in Holland for many people to think he was Dutch. There are many reasons for considering Schillebeeckx a great theologian as distinct from merely a good one. One is that he was among the first Catholic theologians to take seriously the critical study of Scripture and integrate it consistently into his systematic theology. Another reason lies in the sheer size and depth of this theologian's theological reflection. He had a large mind, a generous, honest, and open spirit, and the range of the topics he considered over decades is simply extraordinary. The element that I find most instructive in Schillebeeckx's theology revolves around the changes in Catholic theology that occurred during the Second Vatican Council. Schillebeeckx was in mid-career during the council, and his participation in it changed him. The change resulted in a fairly clear division of Schillebeeckx's theology into three stages: an early period, a period of change during the late 1960s, and then a later final period from the 1970s onward. Because Schillebeeckx had a habit of continually reading and reflecting what he was actually reading in what he wrote, one has in his work something like a detailed map of the changes that took place in the church, broadly. Moreover, Schillebeeckx justified it in a deep and rigorous fashion. I know of no other Catholic theologian who better illustrates this transition. I can describe more specifically, but in three very broad strokes, the shifts that took place in his theology. First, the council opened up the church to the world and to modernity, and Schillebeeckx realized that this had consequences. It meant that the church had to know what was going on in the world, take it seriously, and respond to it. Europe was becoming secularized. The non-Western churches wanted indigenous ecclesiology and theology. The church had to respond to the poor around the world in every imaginable situation. People were suffering. Schillebeeckx's theology incorporates these imperatives and contains a careful rationale for enculturation and for an option for the poor. Second, relative to the church's understanding of Jesus Christ in the New World context, as distinct from European and the Northern context, Schillebeeckx realized that one had to approach Jesus from below. This means beginning with Jesus' earthly ministry, something that the whole world can relate to. Christological interpretation begins there and builds on the experience that this Jesus was raised by God. This basic point of departure has revolutionized Christology. A third point has to do with Schillebeeckx's creation theology and his concern for the future into which all of history is heading. Once one experiences and recognizes how relentlessly unstable history is, how things always change, one has to ask where everything is going. Schillebeeckx's theology faces up to the disorientation that globalization and pluralism have introduced into our lives. He has presented Christianity as a mediation of God's grace within this dynamic flow of history. He calls this grace salvation, and he gives a plausible ground for human hope and an impulse for constructive behavior in history. One can't ask for too much more than that. Thank you.